Microphone. I don't know if my micro. It does. It works. Let's go. All right. Well, if you've probably read the title of this video, I think you'll be pretty surprised at where this is going. So I'm going to, first of all, before I go any farther, I'm going to link the dude who gave me this idea in this guy, Ifti Sturman. Sturman helped a lot with the idea. So his YouTube name is Blacktop. Support that man in any way possible because he is the main reason for why faction fights is now going to exist. And today I'm going to explain to you what I'm going to be doing for faction fights. Not, who's getting paired up against who, but rather other universes and the Blood and Steel series. This is supposed to be like a who would win type of versus. So let's say, maybe the Earth's Defense Force during the UNSC at like 2552 against, maybe a United Planets fleet. Who would win? That type of thing is what I'm talking about. So I thought at first, it's like, why would I do this? But then I started looking into it and I realized that this has potential and that there are a lot of things I could say or do that would make this more interesting or entertaining in a sense to others. And I'm not going to be able to do any today because I haven't even done any research or any of that. But the video I'm creating today will explain to you, I guess, the type of process I'm going to go through in figuring out every single faction that is going to be fighting. This doesn't have to be just a 1v1. This could be a multiple way all-out war or just an all-out skirmish. And it won't just be that, but it'll just use like maybe 1-2 divisions of each nation and see who would win. Even that I think would be a cool thing to do. So the first one that I have seen, I will list the top 3 picks for the upcoming. That one was the very first one. The very first one I used as an example is actually one, but that one's going to be a little different than the other 2. The other 2 were not you'd expect. Basically, this one is the IW versus, what does it say? Oh, that's actually good. Oh. I wish I could show it to the stream. Damn it. Okay, well, the second one is actually the IW versus the modern world as of right now in 2021. Ooh. That's a good one. I actually think it's a good one. Earth does stand a chance in that one. They really do, because the IW does not have many troops at the end of the millennia, which is kind of around where the final story that I'm about to say will take place. It's about where everything stopped. It's the end of the millennium. And that is where the IW is at one of its weakest points. It barely has 17 million troops, maybe 18 million at best. There's no way they'd be able to invade all of Earth. They have less troops than they need. Earth has many more people. And where the IW is situated, it's mainly in a world that is rural. It's not a world that has many cities. So it makes sense as to why this would be an interesting thing for some people. But the third one, to me, was one of the most interesting. This was actually the New Coalition versus the UNSC. Ooh. All of these are good. I could not believe the 3. I might make a video for every single one of those. I need to write this down, bruh. All of this is good. All of these ideas are good. I can't believe this. Give me that shit. I see him give me that shit and I nearly ripped my table in half. So I have the UNSC. So we've got the UNSC and United Planets, IW, and we have the new coalition against the UNSC. Oh, all of those are just beautiful video ideas. So today I'm going to be talking to you about what process I'm going to be going and to show you what's going to win. So the first thing I want to write down is military size. Everyone says that military size don't matter in terms of conflicts, but it really does. If you truly think about it, it depends how big your military is how many men you can send. It is incredibly important to note that you have to have sufficient military numbers in order to commence an operation. So the first thing that's going to be thought of is numbers. Second is equipment. And we're going to be talking about the equipment they're using and if it's outdated or if it's more advanced than the current future. And then we're going to compare damage of the weapons. So like the MAC cannon of a UNSC ship would go straight through any hole. That's true. It would probably like 2 or 3 shot a normal United Planets carrier, and I think that still would stand. And like you could probably 2 or 3 shot a normal United Planets carrier, but at the same time, proton torpedoes would do that to UNSC ships too. Maybe 1 or 2 shot them. So it is a scary thing, and it's a matter of where. The difference between the proton torpedo and the MAC cannon is that you can fire proton torpedoes anywhere within a given area. So you could point the cannon out there and fire torpedoes that way, that way, that way, or that way. But with the MAC cannon, you can't do that. That's the difference between the two. There's more mobility and more adaptability to the proton torpedo. That's why you got to compare the weapon damage. Another thing you got to compare is the weapon cost. This is going to depict how much ammo that you're going to have along with how effective it is, because cost eventually leads to cost efficiency. If it's not very cost efficient and it costs a lot of money, it's kind of a useless weapon. And the same thing with the MAC cannon. It is not cost efficient enough to be considered a threat in the United Planets visionary. So the MAC cannon would be seen as like a railgun, a fast shooting railgun, which is basically what it is. But that's not really a threat. An antimatter bomb to them would be a threat. And to the UNSC, that would be Armageddon. They never would have dealt with that type of weapon before. So to them, that would be ultimate Armageddon. This is why we're doing these comparisons. Number 3 is discipline. Military discipline is going to be vastly important in this fight. And in this series, discipline is going to be the biggest factor in depicting how well a military would do under stress. The United Planets military, you have to take multiple years just to get trained proper. It generally takes you 5 to 6 years, but Special Forces takes as many as 50 years. There's a good reason why the Rangers, the United Planets Rangers, and many others generally don't lose anybody or barely anybody. They get trained so well, those guys don't make a single mistake in some of their tasks. They're scary. The UNSC would get their ass clapped. Let's face, in a normal 1v1, UNSC Marines would just get fucking destroyed. And another that we also need to talk about is not just, equipment, but morale. That is another big key factor. So the big 3 is discipline, equipment, and morale. I'm starring the ones on the sheet of paper that I'm writing down this right now. And I've already written down 6 already. The 7th one is going to be even scarier than the others. It's technically not really controllable, the 7th factor, but morale in a military would be important. If you do not have the will to fight, how are you going to fight? What's the point of fighting if you know there's no reason to fight? And that's kind of how the U.S. lost its war in Vietnam, is it just didn't have the morale. It had the military and it had the strength, and it was beating the hell out of Vietnam until the government just decided we don't need to fight it anymore. So they did. Same thing with Afghanistan. We were doing just fine, but it's the people that didn't want to fight, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. So that's why we're sending troops home. So the seventh, and I don't know if this is going to be the final factor, but this is going to be where anything else occurs, is the X factor. The X factor basically means any factor that can change. Environment, weather, that can end the terrain. That's why I'm saying it's an X factor, because you're not always going to be on the ground. You could be in space, you could be in the air, you could be at sea. There's so many different places where you could fight. That's why I'm putting environment in the X factor. And then I'm going to list that. Environment. B is going to be weather. Environment, terrain, weather. It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. Environment. The environment and the weather. I don't even know if I'm done yet. I might not be done yet. But an eighth factor in my thought process would be, I guess, past conflict, or how well you maintain your military, or maintenance. Just because you have a good military doesn't mean you can maintain it. And that's why the NC may not have the power to knock out the United Planets military. The United Planets has one of the highest maintenance costs of any military to ever exist in their timeline. And with the NC's power and its military strength, it would probably do some heavy damage if the United Planets did not maintain itself very highly. And that's why so many aircraft of the United Planets become advanced, like the Cobra tank, which is basically the Space Abram. I'm not even gonna doubt that anymore. It's the Space Abram. It actually does look like an Abram. It's so scary. Just got like a dummy thick cannon. It's got a dummy thick cannon. It's nearly twice the size of a normal Abram cannon, so it makes sense as to why I think another. I have a feeling that there's more that I could do. I think there is even a ninth thing. I just got to think. Oh, yeah, economy. That's the one I was thinking for. And just how well you could support your military. Just because you have good maintenance doesn't mean your economy can support that. And I figured out that the 10th one is resources. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of things written down on this piece of paper here. I'm getting everything I can, because the more I bring into consideration, the better the chance another military has. So I'm just going to write some random thing down, and I'm going to show you in an example just how well this could be done and give you a reasonable, realistic response. Let's say the Holy Warriors. You guys remember the Holy Warriors. So I'm going to write it down. And let's say the Holy Warriors are going to be fighting NATO. Just in this is just an example. I don't have a really good clue, but let's look at NATO and the Holy Warriors. Numbers. The Holy Warriors only number at about 8 million at maximum. They were never a big force to begin with. The IW could probably squash them easily. So they're a ragtag group of rebels that act as Holy Warriors on Bastion. So Bastion still in this time period is still a desert wasteland, but has more people than it did when the United Planets first founded. Numbers. NATO has approximately 1.6 million men in its active military service and about 2 to 3 million in its reserves. So already NATO is not in a good position in terms of numbers, but again, it is not a major decision. It is not a major factor. And as I'm counting, 5 major factors are being shown. The first major factor is equipment. NATO has pretty advanced weapons, as many of them of which are some some of them are old US weapons. So to us, they have pretty advanced weapons, like the Typhoon. They have many advanced fighters that we used to own, and that seems pretty good on the surface, but the reality is that the Holy Warriors have more aircraft. As again, that doesn't always mean it's better. And in this scenario, you would actually be right. It's not any better. Sure, they have on average better fighters, but the fact is they've never fought a Typhoon before. So they're in a very bad position in terms of fighting a NATO fighter. Even though I don't want to give this to the Holy Warriors, they get 2-0. But here is where I think NATO is going to take a big fat dub. Compare the damage. Holy Warrior fighters like the Raptor, which is almost 1,000 years old, it's so outdated that it does no damage, basically, to anything. It is such an outdated aircraft that even an F-22 could probably shoot that thing down. I could bet you money an F-22 could shoot it down. It's slower than an F-22. So I'm going to give this to NATO because NATO's weapons can sink ships. The Raptor can barely destroy a fighter. So NATO finally received a dub. Cost. This is where everything goes down, and I compare the cost to its efficiency. And this is where NATO strikes yet again with another dub. Why? Remember when I said that NATO ships can be sunk simply by one fighter? Well, you needed about 10 Raptors to sink a single ship or to destroy a single massive freighter, which is not even armed with military weapons. The Raptors were very, very hindered in their military careers. So that means NATO gets another dub because NATO's fighters can sink ships. They can sink ships. Now, here's another one, discipline. Ooh, this one goes to NATO yet again because NATO's men are trained similar to how the U.S. trains their guys. How they get trained in multiple areas of combat. They get deployed regularly, depending on which NATO country, like Britain or Germany definitely doesn't get deployed, but France and Britain do get deployed. So their discipline will be through the roof. While the Holy Warriors, like I said, are ragtag groups of rebels with weapons. That's all they are. They're basically militia. So yet again, NATO takes another dub. See what I mean? Just because it seems as something futuristic is going to kill them, the Holy Warriors are not as powerful as you think. And I think the United Planets is also not going to be as powerful as you think once you see these weapons and research. I think another thing is I think 11 will be plenty. So as we did that, morale. NATO, as of right now, does not have the morale to fight. The Holy Warriors, on the other hand, have also been shown to not really be any morale. So I think this one is going to be an equilibrium. There's going to be no one that tops the other. Both sides are not very, I guess, fighting worth. So no one wins the morale side. So that means NATO has gotten 3, while Holy Warriors have 2 so far. Let's continue. The X factor, terrain, and the weather. So this will depict how the war will be fought. And the X factor, no one's going to really win the X factor because it depends. So X factor is going to be a gray zone. So that one is going to be discussed now. The environment, most likely it's going to be on Earth, which will give NATO the advantage. And the weather is most likely going to be with NATO as well because the Earth has weather that the Holy Warriors don't have. They have come from a planet that is super hot. So if they land troops on NATO soil, they're not going to realize that their weather is a lot less severe. And now they're going to be super, super either hot or cold. And they're going to be dealing with something they've never dealt with before, basically making NATO take the win because they're on their terms. So NATO gets another win, 4-2. And to people who thought that the Holy Warriors were pretty powerful, they're not. They suck at their jobs. They're fucking, bro. They are maintenance, and of course that goes to NATO again. As of right now, that is the number. NATO's just fucking doing everything, man. Maintenance. That is definitely going to be the big part. And here's where NATO is actually losing this one. Let me explain why. The maintenance of NATO's aircraft is only as good as its economy. NATO's economy is based upon the many nations that exist and coexist within NATO. The only way for NATO to fund these equipment and all this is if those nations give money to the governments and the military contractors. With the Holy Warriors, they could just let the economy of their own planet build them weapons. And they just use those. There's really no other problem. So in terms of maintenance, I actually am giving this one to the Holy Warriors. Another one is the economy. I'm mostly giving that to the Holy Warriors. And the reason why is because it's a space empire. It's literally a space fucking empire. Their economy, I have calculated to be approximately 200 trillion credits, which is approximately 300 trillion US dollars. That's 4 times the economy of the Earth at only about 600 million people. Yeah. The reason why it's that high is mainly because they mine in space and they give resources, tons of resources like platinum, zirconium, and all these different resources to nations that don't have the same exact colonies. So they have resources. They have plenty. They don't need. And the next one is resources, which now again goes to the Holy Warriors. Again. So now we're tied. And the reason why, like I said, they have hundreds of worlds of resources with billions of asteroids worth of resources. These guys do not screw around. They would have way more resources than all of Earth combined, probably times 1,000,000. There's no contest, period. There's no contest. But here is where is going to be the final thing. So here's the final address that I need to get into you guys' head. Technological research. Just because you have good technology doesn't mean that you can research good technology in time. And this is where NATO takes the lead yet again. Every single year, NATO devises and builds something brand new. With the Holy Warriors, they don't have technological research because they're not the ones researching. NATO would take, you would think, well, NATO would take maybe some. You would think, well, maybe NATO would win. Let's just see. With the 5 that I have starred, equipment, discipline, and morale all go to NATO. Well, technically the discipline and equipment go to NATO. The morale is equilibrium, and the economy and resources go to the Holy Warriors. And the X factors of environment and weather favor the NATO forces. So in my final verdict, in a realistic scenario, NATO has a better chance at winning a war about 6 times out of 10 against the Holy Warriors. NATO would win a real war against these guys. That is basically how I depict the upcoming battles of faction fights. So I actually really like this idea, and the fact that I have 3 different types and 3 things I could do, I'm so glad I could do this video. I am so glad. And I'm so glad that Sturman allowed me to do this. Oh my God. You need to go support that man every way you can. I'd say right there is where his YouTube name is Blacktop. But yes, Blacktop is Sturman. Say hi to the guy. But I'm going to have to end the stream here not because of anything normal, but if you guys have any questions about this brand new faction fight series, I am going to be making one of these videos within 2 days. Probably tomorrow. I might even make one of them tomorrow. So I plan on doing which one of these? Now, I'm going to be going to my Discord channels and posting a poll of what do you want me to do? Do you want me to do number 1, 2, or 3? And they'll have those listed. Whatever one that gets voted will be done first. All of them will get done. That is a promise I will be keeping. Every single one of those will get done. But it's a matter of which one gets done first and which one will have the best results. So I'm just going to wait and see what you guys have to say. If you guys actually like this, please tell me. Just tell me in the comments. You don't even have to like this video. You don't even have to subscribe to me. As I've always said before, I'm not going to be that type of YouTuber that go, well, please subscribe, hit the bell, and all that. No, I don't do that shit. So if you guys want to see this, make sure you tell me in the comments. But as of right now, I have nothing else to say. So I'll see you guys in the next video. And I hope to God it's number 2 or number 3. I mean, number 1's nice, but you guys will vote for it yourselves. I'll see you there.